Hello and welcome to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. Is it a bad sign when I start the show not remembering what the show is? I'm Devlin and I hope you're having yourself a great day. Thank you for taking the time to hit play and listen to this week's episode. I'm going to start off this show with talk about behind the scenes stuff. I don't always talk about that, but I guess since I've been doing this for over a year now, it's tend to happen because I just talk about whatever I feel like. Well, a couple of weeks ago, my partner in crime, Heather, you may know her as Corda as well, she came to me and said that she had booked a trip to a Disney cruise with her family, and that we're going to have to find a way to get the show done because I have not missed a Thursday yet. And so, we would have to find a way to make sure we have the episodes and that I can put them up for you, which means that I'm going to have to work my ass off and put a whole bunch of segments together because I don't want to miss an episode. I couldn't believe the audacity of her, like not even warning me beforehand. She had already booked it, and I just thought to her, I cannot believe you're putting me in this situation. I'm going to just now have to come up with all these episodes, and I'm going to have to actually do some of my own work now, Yeah, she's going to produce them, put them together, but I actually have to go on YouTube and push a button or something, she tells me. And I'm like, I cannot believe the self-centeredness and the fact that, it's all about her. It's all about her when she knows that our friendship works because it's all about me. Now, for those of you who are probably sitting there, what an asshole, what a prick. You don't know my relationship with Corda. She's probably laughing her ass off right now because she knows this is about maybe 80% untrue. She knows there's some truth in there at some point, but she also knows how our dynamic works. And our dynamic has always been kind of like that. I'm very joking. I can do that. And I'm going to tell you one thing about Corda. The one reason that I cherish her so much, I love her so much, and how she puts her heart and soul into this show just as much as I do. I can tell you when she booked that cruise, one of the top things on her head was, oh my God, we got to make sure that Devlin's Pirate Radio Show continues in the time that I'm gone. And she was probably thinking, oh my God, how can I break this to him in a way that he's not going to freak out? Well, I freaked out a little bit. And it's not that I'm upset with Corda or anything like that. I get she has an opportunity to go on a wonderful cruise. I just think of the fact that Disney is taking over my life. They've taken over my Star Wars. They've taken over my Marvel. They've taken over my Muppets. Now they're even affecting my show because, Corda and her family are so bloody obsessed with Disney that they're going to be living it up, and I'm going to have to sit here waiting on Thursdays to push a button for you. But I decided my first segment would be to Corda because she does offer so much to this show, and I do praise her, but I don't think I praise her enough. She's one of my best friends, and she definitely is every part of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show because she is the one who puts all the pictures up on YouTube. That's her baby. She picks all the ones out. Even that one that some of you may have caught of Hitler reading the newspaper, that wasn't me, my sick little mind. That was actually Heather. And because she does a wonderful job on that. Anyhow, I decided to pay tribute to her in this segment because there's a chance the boat might sink. I've seen Titanic. It happens. I know it doesn't happen as often as it does, but you never know. One minute you could be dancing with Mickey and the Seven Dwarfs, and the next thing you know, things. So for that, I would like her to one, hopefully she'll enjoy this segment as a tribute to her. And two, I hope she wears a life jacket for the whole time she's there, just in case. Because, if I have to learn how to edit this show, I'm in real trouble. But Corda does so much for the show. She's, as I've told you before, she was the one who got me the microphone and to get me started on this. And she was the one who kind of convinced me. I was the one who just kind of came up. I get these ideas and I say, oh, I think I should podcast. And then the next thing I know, she's there. Here's a microphone. So I decide to podcast. Any ideas? I talk to her first. And, she's mostly a yes person. She knows that even if she says no, I'll probably talk her into it. But most of the time, we're always on the same page, except for this Disney cruise. I don't like cruises. I don't like the idea of it. The image of, Heather waving to me through a porthole, like on the Love Boat or something, may sound romantic, but I just picture, lifeboats and stuff like that. Again, I'm not being an asshole trying to freak her out. She is loving this. I'm telling you right now, she's giggling her ass off. But anyhow, and then I mentioned, boy, it would be great to have a recorder that I could do remotes for. And what does she do? She goes out and on my birthday, she gets me a recorder to do remotes. Which thank God I have, because I'm actually recording today's episode on it. Because the first mic she bought me, either I have screwed up somehow, which me and technology, not so hard to believe, or or it just went dead, just from all that good programming. Anyhow, I like how this is a segment about Corda, but it always comes around me again. And that's because me and Corda are almost inseparable. When I first met Heather, she was just this sweet, innocent girl who, as much as I love the Wakefords, she lived a really sheltered life. It was all pretty much Disney and happiness and harmony. And I changed all that. I came into her life larger than life, and I basically just showed her John Waters films and heavy metal and lots of different things. I introduced her to new concepts of music. Now, she wasn't all sweetness because she was into the dirty Anne Rice novels and she liked reading erotica and stuff. But I took her from that and moved her into new directions. And I know she loves that. I did. I believe we were meant to meet each other. She's one of the soulmates in my life that I meant to meet her. And honestly, if it wasn't for her in my life, I probably wouldn't be podcasting. I probably wouldn't have done a lot of the things I've done. And for that, I thank her because she is so much this show. We have a segment on one of the things where we told you how we make the show, so I won't get into that. But we look forward to it. We've got it down to an art. We've got it down to an art, a science, and we're looking to go to the next level. I haven't really talked about it because I have some new ideas, but it involves taking this to a different place, and that's probably going to start. We're already plotting it, and that could start as early as June. And I'm really hoping that you get a chance to see that because it's an exciting new phase. And of course, I'm going to need her there for it. So I'm hoping the boat doesn't sink. But when you think of the Devlin's Pirate Radio Show, sometimes you'll hear me say, we're back or we are here. Heather's very seldom in the studio with me, except if you hear her, like when we've done segments. We did a Thanksgiving segment. And stuff like that. And we've also done a segment on how we put the show together. And she's been there for me for that. And but she's never in the studio. She listens to it after we edit it all together. She hasn't even listened to it at that point. It's after when she's looking for pictures and setting up, putting it on my blog page or putting it on iTunes. That's when she gets to listen to it. And usually on Tuesday morning I get a thing, but I still consider her very part of this show. That's why when you hear me talk, I'm always like, We have a great show for you. We have a great, and I think it's great that I just do this without thinking. Because I don't think of this as a one-off. Yeah, I have a bit of an ego, and sometimes I think, hey, it's all me. But I know damn well that I may I may be the heart of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show, but she is the soul of it. And, she is the moon to my sun. And basically, she is the one who gets it on the air. And I would be lost without her. So, when I'm ragging on her and joke, about her, it's all like that. Because, you see, we have that kind of relationship. We always have, and I'm always been very honest, and I think that's why she loves me so much, is because people candy coat her world. As I said, she lived in a very protected world, which I understood, because my parents protected me from a lot of things too. And when I started finding out darker sides of the world, I loved it. And so when I found someone like Heather, I said, I bet you this girl would enjoy that. Because look, she's already kind of stepping there with, these novels she's reading. When she got separated from her husband, she basically, decided that they make better friends than they do a couple. And I hope she doesn't mind that I'm going too deep into this. But basically, she told, her husband that, to save their friendship, they're going to have to separate. Now, I was friends with both of them, Dave and Heather, for a long, long time, and told them no matter what happens, I'm going to stay friends with both. And I'm happy to say that Heather and Dave have stayed very close as well. I think they probably would have drove each other nuts if they stayed married, but they actually have a better relationship now than they did when they were actually married. But when she had to tell Dave this, it was very hard for her because Heather, she's a strong woman. Don't get me wrong. She comes off very shy in that, but I can tell you, she can be very strong, and I don't tell her this enough. But the day that she had to tell Dave, I think she said her parents coddled her, I think her brother or something brought her over ice cream and basically everything to like, oh, we're so sorry you had to do this. You had to do it. I came over and I remember the first thing I said to her was, okay, the coddling is done. Because I'll be honest with you, you were the one that ended the marriage. So technically, Dave is the victim in this. Yes, it takes two people to end a marriage. I totally agree. But in this case, Heather had to be the one to say, we need to end this. So I told her, I am going to be supportive of your decision, but I'm not going to coddle you. Because technically, Dave is the one that needs to be coddled. And I think Heather respects that because I give her what she needs where everybody else just gives her what they think she needs. And I think all the really great friendships I've had in my life, and I've just talked about this to one of my friends, is because I challenge them. And she doesn't get challenged enough. Well, that's before her daughter came. I think her daughter challenges her a lot, but I think she's stepped up to every challenge that has brought on. But yeah, and we've always had that friendship that I can tell her like it is. Because, sometimes families, they like to make things, oh, well, you did what you had to do. You had to do. But I come in and just say, look, so when everybody else is going, oh, this is amazing. You're going on to a Disney cruise and stuff. I'm the guy who's like, well, have you prepared your daughter? She's going to be stuck on a boat for a week. Have you prepared her for this? She probably thinks she can leave at any time, And so I'm the realist in her life. So when I say, well, what are we going to do about the show? What if wear a life preserver all the time. I want to know that you're going to be safe if something happens. So anyhow, I know she totally gets it. And I know she's probably giggling, but she is such a big part of this show. And I try to, every once in a while, I always give her a little shout out, but I decided a full segment just in case the boat sinks. And she laughed when I told her I was doing a segment called Just in Case the Boat Sinks. So she knows my dark sense of humor, but please don't take it as I'm just a horrible person. I have my moments, but I have nothing but love for this woman. She is so much a part of my life. I think even her parents have told me that, if Heather stayed friends with me and Mike and never married again, and we just all stayed close and still hung out together and still did our little get-togethers and role played and did our movie nights and did this show until we're old and gray, Heather would probably still have the happiest life she ever had. And I would like to think that, because I know there would be a great loss if she wasn't there. I am going to miss her immensely for the 2 months, especially those moments where I have to hit that button. One button? That's a lot of work for me. She doesn't know I have to hit like at least 2 buttons to record this. Anyhow, I look forward to all the adventures we get into. I've constantly referred to us as Lucy and Ethel because I'm the crazy redhead who basically will come up with this really unusual, zany idea. And I'm telling you, some of them have been absolutely crazy, and some of them, you never know where they're going to take us. Just a couple of months ago, I was sitting there and just said, I went to an open mic. And a lady was there with a synthesizer, and basically it made me think I might like to get back into my poetry, but I wouldn't mind maybe turning that poetry into some avant-garde music. Is it too late for me to start a musical career? Within days, Heather was looking for ways that I can use to make music on the computer, ways that were easy for me to make music on the computer, and really was there just to support me. Now, this is a project I don't know if it'll come to fruition. All I know is that I've been jotting down lines again. I haven't done poetry in so long, but I would like to maybe venture into this at some point, but she was right there. Just like Ethel would be supporting Lucy, dressing up as hobos or something. And I love that about our dynamic, is that I have it. I wish everybody had such a supportive person in their lives, because I meet people who are artistic and I see that sometimes they do it alone and it's great. They do it. But then I meet ones that have that special someone by their side. And you can just see that special someone brings out so much more to them. And for me, that special someone is definitely Heather / Corta / not Splash, Spools, another nickname I have for no apparent reason, but because I called her Spools on the phone once, like I was some evil Bond villain. Hello, Spools. And she loved it. And started signing her name Spools and stuff. So we have such a great friendship. And I only wish her the best, even though I keep joking and maybe fucking up with her head about, the boat sinking. I want her to have nothing but a great time, because she deserves it. She's worked hard for her money and put it away and saved it. She does an amazing job raising her daughter, and she deserves this trip. And I wish her all the best, and I will only smile when I push that button that I have to on Thursdays, and I know she'll be having a great time, but she'll think, did he push the button right? He better have, because if not, I'm going to hear it when he gets home. And I know she'll be thinking of that, and that's one of the reasons I love her. But guess what? I'll find a way around it. I went in today, getting ready to do my podcast. I plugged in my mic. It was dead. I don't know if have I hit control? I don't know if the mic just went dead. But guess what? I survived. And I managed to get the remote one and said, hey, I can use that. So let's hear it for me a little bit too. So anyhow, Cord, I managed to make this all about me, even though it is totally about you. and know that I couldn't do this without you. You have a great time. Please don't think of me at all, while you're on that trip. I know that won't happen because you're going to see something of the Aristocats or something, and you'll think of me. Alice in Wonderland, because I'm not just in your life, I'm under your skin, and that goes the same for you too. Anyhow, she's going to have an amazing time. I'm going to work my ass off to make sure there's no repeats. So we'll get this done because that's what we do. That's what a real team does. But you let me know next time a little bit more in advance. Okay? You let me know. Anyhow, I'm going to take a short break and then I'm going to rant about The Wizard of Oz. I love this movie, but the more I think about it, I think it could be one of the most important movies ever made. And I'm going to tell you about that in my next segment. Hello, we're back, and I am going to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time. Probably a movie that most people like. Actually, I think I've met only one person that said they didn't like it at all. And I think I've only met one person who said they never saw it. Other than that, this is probably a movie everybody has seen. It's The Wizard of Oz. And I absolutely love this movie, and I'm surprised I haven't talked about it yet, but today is the day. Wizard of Oz to me is such an incredible movie. It was made back in 1939. And it was probably made in 38, but it was released in 39. And it was a commercial disaster. It didn't do very well at all until they started re-airing it on TV and started putting it in matinees in movie theaters. And then suddenly it caught on and wound up making its money. It's funny that so many of our big loved movies now, like movies like It's a Wonderful Life and stuff, were actually box office flops. Of course, the movie starred Judy Garland and Ray Bolger and Ben Lahr. Bert Lahr. Who's Ben Lahr? Bert Lahr. And Margaret Hamilton. Like so many wonderful people. And the movie just from 1939 standards, I still think looks absolutely amazing. Based on the books by Frank Baum, they took this little movie, and I just know so much trivia about it, but I don't want this all to be about trivia because I actually want to analyze the importance of this film. But I will say that I'm still mesmerized. I can still watch that Twister scene so much because this was done in 39. And now, we go to a movie and we take for granted the effects that we see. You basically go into any movie and there's gorgeous effects. But the truth of the matter is that, back then this was just spectacular. And then just when Oz, you go to Oz and it turns up color, just a phenomenal piece of it was so magical when you just see the vibrance of the color. And I recently got the big Wizard of Oz box set. Mike gave it to me for Christmas a few Christmases back, and I get so many versions of the movie, and there was so much memorabilia in it. Just a phenomenal little film. Now, I don't want to throw too many tidbits your way, but some interesting facts I always liked. Judy Garland was obviously a lot older than she was playing in the movie. They actually had to make her look more like a young girl because Dorothy is fairly young in the movies. But she was still a teen sensation, but they had to kind of strap her down and stuff in many ways. Over the Rainbow almost got cut from the final cut of the film. It was the last minute that the producers fought to get Over the Rainbow back into it. And of course, I think Over the Rainbow is probably one of the most loved songs out there, only because, I think it's innocent, it's sweet, it's simple, it's just beautiful. And Judy Garland, of course, her voice was just spectacular. But I guess some of the people behind it thought that MGM thought it slowed the movie down. And And they thought that because, like, you're starting your movie and then right at the beginning there's this ballad, they felt that it slowed the movie down. I actually thought I'm glad they put it back in because I think it kind of worked with the fact that Kansas was black and white. It was slow. It's definitely a yearning song. And then when the action starts, once the tornado starts and the twister and they get to Oz, that's when everything happens. So I'm glad they did take the time. I think the problem with movies today is that they don't take their time enough. We got into a generation where we have to have constant stuff going on, and I love that The Wizard of Oz takes its time. Some wonderful characters in the movie. I totally understand why it's a gay cult classic. Dorothy's rainbow. We got the rainbow. Dorothy's yearning to be something special or find a place that accepts her. It's a huge thing. I can understand why gay men and just anybody embraces this movie if you're longing for something. But, Judy Garland, of course, was a big supporter of gay rights. And this movie is just, so vibrant and out there. It's so flamboyant that I understand why it's embraced by the gay community. What else can I say about The Wizard of Oz? It's awesome. If you've never done the Wizard of Oz, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon night, definitely do it. Basically, this is where somebody thought the Dark Side of the Moon was the first half of the Wizard of Oz. I don't know if Pink Floyd's ever said to it. I think last I heard they said they did not do it. It's all coincidence. But the coincidences are so beautiful that if you ever have a night, get some friends together, pop the stereo in, turn the volume down for The Wizard of Oz, or mute it, and then basically once the second roar of the lion goes on the MGM logo, start Dark Side of the Moon, and then just play that album. You will see some amazing stuff talking about witches, and basically when they open the door to Oz and it's so colorful, that's when money starts and cash registers start ringing and everything. The tornado music just sounds like it's a wistful tornado going. And like the album ends with a heartbeat. And the album runs right until they are going up to see the Tin Man. And basically around the part where you see where his heart would be, that's where the album ends. So it's understandable why people have said it's got to have been made with that in mind. It certainly gives it a nice lore, and even if it's true or not, wonderful to listen to, and then you can pop the rest of the movie on and listen to it. I remember seeing it when it came back to theaters. It's come back to theaters a couple times, but this was before they did the 3D thing. Though I never got to see the 3D enhancement. I wish I did. I hope I get a chance to see it because I think it would be amazing. But I saw it when they brought it back for one of its many anniversaries. The movie's like over, 75 years old, so not surprising. And I remember watching it with my friend Dave, and as we came out of the theater, I said something profound. And I was a 20-year-old, so everything I said was profound. You know how it is. But I said to myself, when I die, I think some of the imagery in The Wizard of Oz, I will miss seeing. Yeah, I think that's profound. At 20, that's pretty profound for me. I just felt that there's some imagery in that movie that is stronger than any movie would kill to have some of those iconic images. And there's also new stuff I find out about the movie all the time. Things that I've learned from there are some theories that come out. I know some movie theorists have talked about it and said that the moral of Wizard of Oz is probably one of the biggest cinematic lies in movie history. Because the movie speaks of there's no place like home. But many question why Dorothy was so anxious to get back home. She was in everybody's way when she was in Kansas. She was nothing. She was nobody. As soon as she comes to this world, she makes friends instantly who want to be there with her. She becomes so important that people, cherish her because she killed this witch. And they put such responsibility and respect in her. A lot of people think, really? Her going back home to being nothing, and we're not even sure if, the woman comes back to take Toto after Toto leaves, yet this is where we want to be. So some say that it's probably one of the biggest lies in cinematic history. But, again, There's No Place Like Home is one of the most iconic movie lines in history. Another theory I absolutely adore is somebody put a thing up, and I don't know if it was because of the musical Wicked, but somebody did some major analysis and said that Glinda the Good Witch is actually the biggest villain in the history of cinema. Yeah, even bigger than Darth Vader or Hannibal Lecter or anybody else. And the reason why is, and yes, I know what you're saying. Isn't Glinda the Good Witch? Yes, she actually goes by Glinda the Good Witch. And, but she also is the one who puts Dorothy up against the Wicked Witch of the West. In fact, she basically puts Dorothy into this path that puts her into harm's way. In order to get home, she has to find the wizard. Along the way, she continues pissing off the Wicked Witch, and basically, everything happens because Glinda constantly puts her into harm's way. Then when the wizard gets there, they have to kill the witch, Dorothy and her friends, and they have to bring the broomstick back to prove it. All the way, Glinda is just watching them on their journey, occasionally helping them once in a while with a snowfall or something. So Dorothy eventually takes on the witch, spoiler alert, but I'm sure you've seen the movie. But anyhow, she takes on the witch, succeeds with the thing, and then the wizard tries to take her home, screws up. And then Glinda comes back. Now, Glinda now is in charge of Oz. She's got everything she could want. What does she tell Dorothy? The way back home was with you all along. You see, it was Glinda who put the shoes on Dorothy, which means when the Wicked Witch tried to get them off, the Wicked Witch burned her hands. So basically, turning Dorothy had no choice but to do this because Glinda forced those shoes on her. The moment that Glinda put the shoes on, Glinda never told her, oh, by the way, if you click your heels 3 times and say there's no place like home, you're going home. What a bitch. So basically, she used a little young girl to fight her battles, and now Glinda now tells her, oh, it was there all along. She even laughs, rubbish, and in her Glinda sort of way. And I love the theory. And now whenever I watch The Wizard of Oz, I still watch it with the fact that sometimes I think, yeah, Glinda is the villain in this. The more I think of The Wizard of Oz, I think of my own theories. And I think this is why The Wizard of Oz is one of the most important movies we'll ever see in our lives. Even if, sure, there's probably 100 other movies you love more. But a lot of people have a special place for The Wizard of Oz. But I think The Wizard of Oz is actually more important in your life than you think. I've always said that I think The Wizard of Oz is basically the meaning of life in a really simplistic way. Basically, you start your life as a child. Your life is black and white. It's simple, a little farm. Then turbulence takes you to put you in the world. Whether that's leaving home, whether that's going to school, going to college. But suddenly you're in the real world where you make friends. You meet people that you've never thought you'd see before, like the Munchkins. You meet friends along the way. You make enemies, whether it's Glinda or the Wicked Witch. And then you search you're on a path to what you're searching for. For some people, it's success. For some people, it's religion, God. And I think the wizard represents religion in some ways, or success, or anything. When you finally find it, you see it as this all-power being. It fears you. You know, you've overcome obstacles to get to it, but now you've hit that point in your life where you have reached what you wanted, whether it's your love of God or success or whatever. Then you find out that this larger in life thing is not really as big as you think. The success may be not as meaningful, or, you know, religion, God, that's very meaningful, but it's still more of a personal journey, and that's the man behind the curtain. Then we have a couple more fights to make it seem that we find our own inner strength. When we get put towards the witch, we basically, that's us fighting our own personal battles, now realizing that it's ourselves that are fighting it. It's not our religion, it's not our successes, it's not anything. And I think that's a powerful, powerful thing. And then when we get to our final achievements, we get these things that represent, you know, when you get your courage or your heart or your brain, you know, whether that's a school degree or whether that's making lots of money or having a family. You start realizing that that stuff's important, but it all comes back down to you. And that's where there's no place like home comes into it. And I know I'm probably analyzing this majorly deep, but I think of this movie a lot, and that's why I think it's very important. And at the end of the day, you're right back in Kansas, and you realize that you were always the person you were, but you've now gained all this experience, and you realize that home is where your heart is. And when you die, people on their deathbed don't think, wow, I wish I would have worked more. Wow, I wish I would have prayed more. I think they think, wow, I wish I spent time with people. And they realize that this is their journey, that home was always the place, and home could represent the friends in your life, the family in your life, everything like that. I also think The Wizard of Oz takes on a very important role too, because as kids, this is one of the first movies that introduces us to evil. Now, there are other movies that do it, but I found when you watch this as a kid that you really got scared. Like, I remember it builds tension. It's just not evil. You know, yeah, sure, Bambi had the mother passing away. They had, you know, Lion King had, you know, the father pass. But I think when we're young, the Wicked Witch and those flying monkeys are some of the first evil we see. And I found things kind of scary. I remember, well, yeah, the flying monkeys freaked me out like most people. But I also remembered the time. When Dorothy's locked up in the tower and basically they run the hourglass, I consider this to be absolutely terrifying. I don't know why, but it's building tension. It's building all this momentum. And quite frankly, I just think that it's just mind-blowing to me. Because it builds this fear, like, you're gonna die when this comes down. And then, like, the witch is actually playing with her mind games, because she'll see Auntie M, you know, like, Dorothy! And she'll see it, and, you know, Dorothy's like reaching out, oh, Auntie M, and then suddenly you see the blur and the witch's face comes in, I'll give you Auntie M! And it's terrifying, because this is the first movie that, you know, I know a lot of people who said, oh, I tried to watch Wizard of Oz with them, but it was creepy. But I think it builds character too, because this is the first movie that we see a really solid villain. And, you know, now that I've talked to you about it and saw how other people perceive it, how I perceive the movie, and, you know, how maybe you even perceive the movie, which I'd love to hear your take on it, I always consider that The Wizard of Oz is probably one of the most important films that you'll ever see. And, it saddens me. Like when I talked to the person who said that they didn't like it saddens me because, I know growing up, this kid got to see a lot of adult stuff way before he should have. And, when he probably saw Wizard of Oz, it was just kind of, eh. And it saddens me because this movie is so iconic and so beautiful. And the fact that it's a musical with on top of all this, dark storytelling and this meaningful storytelling just shows you just how incredible it is. If you have absolutely never seen The Wizard of Oz, I don't know if it'll have the same impact as you have as an adult. But I think the reason people keep coming to this movie, or when you're in a store and suddenly you see memorabilia with the Wizard of Oz, I don't know about you, but I just kind of like get a smile on my face because I remember all the different emotions that I came to love about this. Whether it was Judy Garland's voice or the performances from, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion. Or whether it's the evil of the Wicked Witch, or whether it's you know, everything just makes me just smile because you really go on a journey in this. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, and half the movie is travelogue. But I don't feel the same sense of the journey that I did for watching the hour and 45 minutes that is The Wizard of Oz. Because this, as a kid, was my first journey, and it's a journey I will go on anytime I get the chance. Every time I wonder, is this the last time I'm ever going to see Wizard of Oz? I find myself popping it on again or flicking the TV around and seeing the image, and I will step on that yellow brick road every single time. It is one of the most important movies in your life, and there's a reason. And if you call yourself a film fan, you don't have to love it, but you definitely should see it. It's definitely one of the most important movies you'll ever see. And on that note, we're going to wrap things up, and I'm going to be back. And since I'm on this spiritual side, I think I might talk about spiritualism. And we're back. And as I told you this morning, I decided, hey, let's do a podcast. And so I put in my microphone, plugged it in, and nothing. It's dead, or I've hit a button or something that I can't take off. So I've contacted Corda. I tried to call her a few times, but she's busy. She's probably packing, probably getting all her, string bikinis ready for her big Disney cruise. But yeah, she'll get to me, I'm sure, at some point. Again, not being an asshole, she's enjoying this. Trust me, I know her. I know her sense of humor. But anyhow, I'm recording this today on my little recorder, and I actually kind of like it. I may have to start doing this more often because I'm walking around the house while I'm doing this, and I feel like I'm giving sermons. Like I just gave that Wizard of Oz speech, and I feel it was probably one of my best segments because I was just so fluid. Because I'm not just sitting there. I'm walking around, getting a little exercise in me. So I decided, since I feel like I'm giving a sermon, I talk about spirituality. I have no clue where this segment's going to go, but it's been on my head a lot lately because I think I see a lot of people as they get older get into spirituality. And when I'm talking about spirituality, I don't necessarily mean like religion or God. It could be all those things. But just, you start thinking about your life. You just start thinking about where you are. I had a friend recently had an uncle pass, and I guess he's never had anyone really close die to him, and he basically found out about it, and he didn't know really how to process it. And he was thinking, obviously, about his mother and his grandmother, who, are more linked to him. He said he loved his uncle, but hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And then after, it kind of hit him, and he had a little moment where he had to take some time and tear up and break down. And I think it becomes, when you start losing people that are close to you, that's when spirituality takes a natural feel. But I love that I sometimes see younger people that sort of embrace spirituality. But at the same time, for every one or two of them I see, who seem really with it. I see a whole bunch of younger generations that just don't get spirituality. They think it's symbols and just, strange little, like, oh, I've got to do this to prove, shows my spirituality. And it makes me think about spirituality because I definitely have felt it many phases in my life. I even went on a social search for it. I think I've talked about it before, where I even, went to different churches and checked things out. And to me, eventually I found my spirituality in myself and, having a relationship with God and talking with Him regularly. Not necessarily going to church or anything, but I still feel I'm a spiritual person. I also feel things happen for spiritual reasons when I meet people like, Mike or Heather or any of the other people in my life. I know we worked on it, but I feel there's a spirituality that led us to be there. And that things just line up perfectly. And then suddenly they just, finally fall into place. Anyhow, I'm not trying to reprimand younger people. I know when you're young, you try to, you're trying to figure everything out. And I think spirituality and just what am I all about has all been pushed in the side. I know that was a big thing in the hippie generation, the 70s, even the 80s and 90s. I think there were, people spent time thinking about, what am I all about? And I've been giving this a lot of thought. My nephew recently contacted me, and I love that he's no longer a child. He's in his 20s now, but he still likes to throw things my way and ask my opinion. Even if he knows he's going to do whatever he's going to do, I love that he still trusts in me that. And he recently said to me that he was thinking about getting another tattoo. Now, the first tattoo he got, I'm not a big fan of tattoos. I actually think I've softened of the idea of tattoos in the last couple of years, but I still think the fact that everybody gets them now makes them so less special. I think now if you don't have a tattoo, you're a bigger rebel. Because I think when tattoos came out, that's what they were. They were rebellious. But now people do them for symbolism. I need to have things that I love and appreciate on my body. They would probably think, they'd want to have that on their body. I remember a young guy saying that he had a picture of his aunt put on his body because he wanted to, that represented her. And I said, do you ever tell her that you love her? And he says, oh no, she does. She just knows. And I go, you know what? You should try telling her instead of getting a tattoo on your body. Because I'll tell you that's going to be just as spiritual that she knows. And I think I gave him some food for thought. So my nephew came up with this beautiful looking tattoo and said that he was thinking of doing it. And he had some spiritual thing. And he's not here, so I'm not going to tell you what his spiritual side was. But he had some symbolism. And he got his first tattoo, which I told him I wasn't necessarily for, but I respected his decision to do it, and I'm glad he did it, and just an amazing kid. So I was actually surprised. I just thought one day he'd come in and say, hey, I got another tattoo, but no, I love that he came to me again, and I told him that he's going to get it no matter what, so it doesn't really matter, but I respect that he wanted my opinion, and I said, instead of getting tattoos of things that are spiritual, why don't you just go and just do them? Put those monies towards going on a trip or going boating or, if you want symbolism about your growth. You don't need to tattoo that on your body. Your body is a symbol of you growing. When you see those crow's marks in your eyes, or you notice that you're in a young person's, you notice your body's growing. And that's telling you that's all you need. You don't need a picture of something. But again, I respect this kid. I know he's just absolutely wonderful, so I wish him the best. But it drives me crazy that this is the way people think spirituality is. Like, And there's two things I wanted to talk to you on this with the young people. And number one, I read an article once about how we're making kids not being able to rebel. And I think I've touched on this in other podcasts, but if I haven't, I know I've talked to it about people. Kids don't get to rebel anymore. And the reason why is because we give them so much freedom as kids. You know, we let them do things that are way too early for them to do, but now it's acceptable. I saw the other day a kid with an earring in his ear, a boy who couldn't have been more than 2 years old, and they had already decided he should get a ring in his ear. Now, there's no way a 2-year-old can make that decision. But again, that is a decision that should be, when you're a teenager and you want to get a rebellious earring, but once again, they've taken that rebellion away from the kid. So that means when he is 13, 14, 15, looking for ways to rebel, he's going to find harder ways to rebel. But we keep taking everything away from them. And I think it's true that kids don't know how to rebel anymore. And I think that's why they're in a sensitive position. Like, they're so emotional, or we've replaced fear. Like, I know they said, we got to get fear out of them. But we've placed fear with anxiety, and spiritualism is definitely not there because they don't get it, because they think spiritualism equals church, religion. And all they see is how church and religion is bad because that's all they're given, unless, they go to church and stuff, then they're seeing the other side of it. But, if you look on the news and stuff, everything's blamed on the church. And spirituality doesn't have to be about that. Spirituality can be about nature, your body, just being who you are. But again, we don't give them the tools to learn that. I'm a big John Waters fan. He's the director of movies like Pink Flamingos and Polyester, Serial Mom, Hairspray. And I love this man. He is an out and open gay man. And he is just an amazing one. And I love listening to interviews. And he always says controversial things that I agree with 100%. Like how, we've turned being gay so mainstream and milquetoast that being gay almost seems boring. And it should never be boring. It should be, he likes the days when we were out there causing a scene. That maybe helps my new I don't give a fuck attitude, because I want to be that way. I hate that it's turned into it's lovely. Don't get me wrong. I get emotional when I see a married couple that have been together for a while, old married couple, whether they're lesbians or gay or trans. I get my heart warmed, but the fact that it's just dull, it's just like seeing any other thing now. It's just kind of dull to me. And I know that's going to cause controversy, but it is. And I liked when it was exciting. But he made a really good reference about young people and the difference about them today and how they were in the past, whether it's the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s. He said the big difference and the reason why kids were more spiritual back then and more experimenting and more rebellious was because we were poor. Even if we came from rich families, a lot of us didn't have jobs. A lot of us didn't have any kind of income whatsoever, except maybe a friendly allowance, or maybe we had a part-time job. But basically, that means that we had to look for fun. And yes, sometimes that was in bad places. But the truth of the matter is we were all about ourselves because it was our bodies and our minds. That was the only thing we had. Nowadays, kids are pushed to get your education, get a job to start putting money away. You got to be rich by the time you're 20. You have to have all that. And kids do not know, one, how to rebel, and one, they're so in fear of what am I going to be? Am I going to be a doctor, a lawyer? when we were 15, 16, we didn't know what we were going to be. We just hoped that we would turn out all right. At that age, we thought we didn't want to be like our parents. Of course, when we get older, we realized that wasn't such a bad thing. But we went out and we didn't have any money. So we hung around, we talked, we fucked, we did everything. I didn't fuck as much as I wanted to in my teen years, but most people do fuck. And I'm not saying that kids don't now, but now it comes with, we have to have a relationship now. We have to be a couple now. And they don't get a chance to find themselves. And that's how come they can't find spirituality, because they don't have those tools, because we teach them. And not only us. When you watch videos where they're all going to the club and all drinking the champagne, and they got all the bling and their, thing, you have to have money. I hate that. Last Christmas, I was over at Christmas, and my two nephews, one is just in his 20s, one is just under his 20s, and they were talking about how they hate Christmas because it's all about money. Because they have bills to pay, and they have this. This would not be a conversation in the 70s or 80s. We'd be bitching about not having money, but we'd still be happy because we were still living our lives to the fullest, and we'd make do with what we had. And so when John Waters says the fact that we were poor as kids is the reason we had to go find out who we are, we had to find spirituality, we had to use our bodies and our minds rather than just use skills. Now all I see is a bunch of youths that work at retail or restaurants, and they just look so unhappy because they're like, I thought I was going to be a manager by now, because we also grow these kids up not respecting average jobs. When I was a kid, I looked up to construction workers or garbage men. I looked up to people who worked in factories or restaurants, because I thought to myself, or, department stores, because I said, these people are making an honest living. They're raising their family. I know people who worked jobs that they didn't make much than minimum wage, still sacrificed and managed to put their kids through college and put their kids through, a happy life. And they didn't have much to show for it, but they were still happy. Now we have a whole bunch of unhappy youths that just don't know anything. They're smart, but they're book smart. If they're so smart as they keep saying, then how come they're still smoking more than we did back in the day? How come there's still lots of pregnancies happening? There's no spirituality. There's no trying to find themselves anymore. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about every kid. I meet the odd one who I just like, can I shake your hand or just give you a nice hug? Because I am so relieved to see that there are people that still take time to find out who they are. Finding out who you are is not a job. It's not necessarily an education. I'm not saying you can't find it through education, but there's an education of life too that people are already out of. They'd rather go and watch Netflix and watch a whole season of Game of Thrones. They'd rather play the latest Call of Duty instead of going out and hanging out at, like a club. Now, for the ones that do search for spirituality, I commend you. I think it's great. And in this day and age, it's so important. I'm hoping, they keep saying we're coming back to those times, but as long as we continue to promote that, how come you don't have a job yet? How come you don't know what you want to be? Like 12-year-olds being pressured to know exactly what they want in their lives. Do you really think this is a positive thing? Just put the kid on skates. We have no idea if he likes skating or hockey, but because the whole family did it, we'll just kind of force him into it, and then he'll probably consider it because that's his whole life. Put that kid in ballet shoes, because I liked it as a kid and I failed at it, but she's going to do it. We don't wait around and say, well, what do you want to do? We don't give them that option. They don't know how to rebel, and they certainly don't know how to find their spiritual side. If you are one of those, I commend you, because it took me a long time to find it. But guess what? I grew up poor, which means I cherished a lot of the stuff. When I look on my Facebook, I am surprised at the amount of friends I know from my past. Some of them are really close friends, some stay in my life, some are just in passing. But I have a smile when I see them, because these are things I've made. Kids just collect things now. They just collect people. And they're people that probably don't even give a damn about them. It just looks impressive when you have, oh, look, I have 1,300 people following me on Twitter. That's not spirituality. That's not making friends. That's not making connections. Spirituality is important at any age. And I think some people even find it at an older age. And it doesn't matter when. The sooner you can find it, the better. And as I said, if spirituality to you is the church, then by all means, go to the church. If it's nature, go on a hike. You know, try to find ways to go and do that. Instead of thinking of someone, call them on the phone and say, hey, you up for an adventure? You don't know how many times when I was younger, I thought, if somebody called me up and said, hey, you want an adventure? And I'd be a little bit, no, I don't know. I like to plan and stuff. I'd kill to hear those words right now. I would love to somebody to just pick me up in a car and let's just see where the day takes us. Because when I think about it, when I did that kind of stuff when I was younger, they were amazing. Anyhow, your assignment. Not that I give homework too often, but find a way to go out and do something that you've always been saying you should do that you haven't done. Like, I really need to spend time with this person. Well, stop talking about it. Send them an email right now and tell them I want to spend time with you. Do you have time? Now, obviously, you have to deal with their schedules and stuff. But you know what? The best way to find out that people want to spend time with you is when they start sending it back. But you'll be surprised. I recently did a little Devlin love project where I wrote a status saying, I think you're beautiful now. Even if you're not at the best, I feel your light shining through and I feel the energy. Now, I said to myself, if anybody likes or comments on this, I'm not going to write it, but I'm going to just send them a personal message from me. And I'm going to tell them something I like about them, just let them know I'm thinking about them. I got several and I sent each one out. Some were people that I talked to regularly, some weren't. I talked to one guy that basically I just said, hey, I think from what I've read, we'd be great friends and stuff like that. Something I normally wouldn't do, but now that I've got my new attitude, I did. And guess what? He returned with the same comment saying, yeah, I'd like to hang with you. Here's some information. Let's check our schedules. I barely know this guy, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with that person. Why? Because I took the chance. Your assignment, take a chance. I don't care. If it doesn't involve anyone else, maybe you're sitting in an office right now listening to me, and you think, I haven't been on a hike in ages. I would like to lose the world. Start working on making that happen. Do it. You'll thank me for later. Anyhow, I've come to the end of this crazy whirlwind show. I love speaking like a prophet or something. I may have to walk around more often doing these episodes. If I come off a little winded, that's probably why. But I feel I've lost weight doing this as well. So that's a positive thing. Anyhow, you have a great day. Thanks for sharing your time with me. Go out and do those things I just said you should do, and thank you. And I will talk to you very soon.